Hello everyone, welcome to the first video. In this video we will review nested loop, and this is part 1. So I believe some of you already know how nested loop works. So if you know it, I think you can get started with the first assignment, and if you need to do a quick review, please watch this video. So what we want to do is we want to create the following using a nested loop. So you can see that we are printing breakfast, then we have 1, 2, 3, and we are printing some underscores. Same for lunch, same for dinner, and we want to do this using a nested loop. So let's see how this can be done. I already have a file open and I'm going to start doing this. So there are different ways this can be done, so I'm going to show you what I do. So I'm going to first do a list. So let's say call this daily food, and I'm going to assign the 3 options we have: breakfast, and then we're going to do lunch, and then we have dinner. So these are my 3 items in this list, daily food. Now what I want to do is I want to print these using a for loop. Okay, so I'm going to do for I in range, and I'm going to do 3, and then I want to print that list, so I can do print daily food I. So I believe some of you already know how this is working. I'll just quickly explain. So for I in range 3, if you do range 3, that means it's going to start from 0. By default, the range starts from 0. It's going to go from 0, 1, 2. Okay, so it's going to increase by 1. Okay, so it's going to go 0, 1, 2. If you said 3, 3 is not included. Okay, and then what we are doing is you're using the I as an index number. So if you guys know how index number works, it is working I. That means the first I is 0. If you say daily food 0, that means you're printing breakfast, because breakfast is in the 0th index. And then I is going to be 1, so that means it's going to print lunch, and then I is going to be 2, that means it's going to print dinner. Okay, I'm not explaining this in details because I believe you all know about this. If anyone has any questions, please write in the comment section and I'll explain this further. Okay, so this will print the 3 options: breakfast, lunch, dinner. So we're done with the outer loop. So when you have a nested loop, you have an outer loop and you have an inner loop. So the breakfast, lunch, and dinner should be in outer loop, right? Because 1, 2, 3 is part of the breakfast or lunch or dinner, right? So I'm going to give it a name. Let's say this is the outer loop. It's a good practice to add comments, because if someone else is reading your code, it will be helpful for them to understand what's happening. And then I'm going to create an inner loop. So I'm going to call this inner loop. So remember, the inner loop should be inside this for loop. So obviously you can start from here saying for. If you do this, that means this is not part of this. This is another independent for loop. So to do that, you can just press the tab button. So that will make sure that this is aligned with this line. So the for loop and the line number 4, they should be correctly aligned. So let's call this j. So for j in range, so remember we want to print 1, 2, 3, right? We don't want to start from 0, but by default it starts from 0. We don't want to do that, so that's why you have to do 1, comma 4. Now why I'm doing 1, comma 4? Because if you know how range works, it's going to start with the first number, start. It's inclusive to stop. That means that is exclusive by step. So that means if you do 1, comma 4, it's going to do 1, 2, 3. 4 is excluded. Okay, so that's what we want, right? We want to print 1, 2, 3. But we also want to print the underscore. So let's see how that can be done. So I'm going to print j. So j will start from 1, and then I'm going to do 2, then 3, and then it will stop. But we also want to add underscore, so that can be done by putting a comma, and then in double quotes you can put 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so 4 underscores. So that means the way it is working now is that your outer loop will start working, and as soon as it prints breakfast, the inner loop will start running, and the inner loop will print 1, 2, 3 and adding all these underscores. Once the inner loop is done, again it will return back to the outer loop to print lunch. Once lunch gets printed, again the inner loop will start working. Okay, and same thing will happen for dinner. So that means the inner loop is running 3 times for every time the breakfast, lunch or dinner gets printed. Okay, so that is how a nested loop works. So if you run this, you'll see it. So breakfast, lunch, dinner, and that's what we want. We can put an end at the end, so once the loops are done. Also notice carefully that we have an arrow. This arrow is showing that, okay, all this code, you can see a vertical line there. The for loop starts from line number 3, it goes all the way to line number 7. This for loop starting at line number 6 and keep going. So the last thing we want to do is we want to just print some lines. Okay, just to match with this. So now if I run this again, it will print this. Now I want to change one thing, so I don't want to use 3. Okay, 3 is a fixed number, so what I want to do is instead of 3, I want to do len daily food. I think you guys know that len function, what it does is it returns the number of items in a container. So it's going to show you, okay, how many items you have. 3. Instead of 3, I'm using len daily food. So len daily food also mean that is 3. The reason we're using this because right now you have 3 items, so you know that you're gonna write 3. But if you have a list with 20 items or 30 items, you're not gonna count one by one to use that number, right? Instead of, we can just use len daily food or whatever the name of the list. Okay, so obviously it's not gonna change the result. It's the same thing, but it's better to use len daily food. Okay, so we are using the len function here. Okay, so I hope this makes sense. If you have any questions about this, please write in the comment section. Now, using this concept, I want you to do something extra. So first, practice doing this, and then let me show you what I want you to do. After printing this, breakfast 3 items, lunch 3 items. Obviously, we don't have any items. Now, what I want you to do is add items. Now, let's see how this can be done. So first, I'm going to show you the same thing, and then you can see that we have, okay, add breakfast item, add breakfast number 1. Okay, so this, you can see this is another nested loop, not part of the first one. The first one, the first nested loop is doing this, the blank items, and now the second nested loop is allowing you to add items. So it's saying, okay, add breakfast item. Now it says, okay, add breakfast number 1. So let's say I'm going to add milk, for example. Now you can see that how this is getting printed. It says 1 is milk. So 1 is pointing to this one, but okay, 1 should be milk. Now you can see it says add breakfast number 2. Okay, so I'm going to add, let's say, cookies. And now you can see it says 2 cookies. See how I'm adding number 1 dot milk. So I want you to do this similarly. So now add breakfast item number 3, let's say chocolate, for example. Done. Once you're done with adding all 3 items, it's going to go to the next option, which is add lunch items. And now it says add lunch number 1. So let's say beef, for example, and then let's say potato, and let's say salad, for example. So you can see I added all 3 items for lunch, and now it goes to dinner. Let's say salmon, and let's say steamed veggies, and let's say rice, for example. So now you can see how I added all the 9 items, 3 items for breakfast, 3 items for lunch, and 3 items for dinner. So this is what I want you to do as your first assignment. So assignment number 1, you can use the CodeHS Python editor, and you can do the following using a nested for loop. So this is one nested loop, and then you have another nested loop to add the items. Okay, so this is going to be your first assignment, guys. In the next video I will go over this. Okay, see you in the next video, guys. Bye.